Welcome back to Nick's Scary Stories, where tonight we're heading into Fresno, California. You might think of orchards, dry wind, and long highways, but this city has darker corners, forgotten streets, silent houses, and tonight's first story is one of the most unsettling things we've ever been sent. This one comes from Maria G., a nurse who inherited her uncle's house on Almond Street. She thought it would be a blessing, a fresh start, but the house had been waiting for her, and the first thing it did was close the blinds. If you're listening, turn the lights down. And if you've ever had a house that felt like it didn't want to be alone, this story is for you. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, the charged kind, the kind that makes you feel like the walls are holding something back. My uncle died in that house, sudden stroke, no signs of struggle. But when I walked through the front door for the first time, I felt like I was intruding. It was like stepping into a dream I'd already had. Nothing had been touched. Mail still stacked. Dishes in the drying rack. The living room fan slowly turning even though the switch was off. I chalked it up to Fresno heat warping the wiring. I was trying not to spook myself, but then I found the list. It was taped to the fridge. A handwritten list in my uncle's tight, looping script. Daily reminders. Feed the cat. Close all the blinds. Don't answer the door after dark. Don't look in the mirror in the hallway after midnight. If she sings, do not respond. There was no cat. No mirror in the hallway either. Not yet. I spent that first night sleeping on the couch. I didn't trust the upstairs bedroom. It was too cold even in the summer heat. At some point after midnight, I woke up needing water. I walked to the kitchen, and as I passed the hallway, I stopped. There was a mirror on the wall. Oval, brass framed, like it had always been there. I froze. It was too tall to have hung without me noticing. I walked up to it and stared. My reflection looked back, tired, confused, but something was off. The hallway behind me and the glass was darker. Just barely. I blinked. My reflection didn't. I stepped back. The light above the mirror flickered, then went out. I ran to the kitchen, locked myself in, and didn't leave until sunrise. When I returned to the hallway the next morning, the mirror was gone. The hook was still there, but the glass was gone. I started following the list. I didn't know why. I just knew it made me feel safer. I closed every blind before sunset. I unplugged the doorbell. I kept my voice low even during the day, and for a few weeks nothing happened. But then one night I heard singing. A soft, lilting melody, wordless, like a lullaby made of breath. It came from upstairs. I stood at the foot of the stairs, frozen. The sound drifted down like dust. Familiar, almost like something I knew in childhood but couldn't place. The list flashed in my mind. If she sings, do not respond. I covered my ears. The song grew louder. I shouted, stop. And just like that, silence. The air turned heavy. Something stepped on the stair above me. Then another. Then another. I backed into the hallway and slammed the bedroom door shut. When I turned around, the mirror was back. Only this time, I wasn't in it.my reflection was gone. The hallway mirror, that strange oval thing that appeared and vanished, now showed only empty space. The hall behind me was visible, but I wasn't there. I waved my hand. Nothing moved. I stepped to the side. The image stayed still, and then something entered the frame. A woman. Well, hair down to her chest, tangled like seaweed. She stood just behind where I should have been, her eyes two pits of black glass. She opened her mouth, and though no sound came through the mirror, I could feel her breath, cold, damp, on the back of my neck. I turned. Nothing. But the hallway light flickered violently, and when I looked back at the mirror, the woman was closer. This time she was smiling. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the kitchen with every light on and the faucet running just for sound. At 3 a.m. I heard the blinds in the living room snap open, one by one, as if pulled by invisible hands. I tiptoed in and watched the last slat fall open. Outside the window across the street was a woman standing barefoot in the road. She lifted her hand and waved. I closed the blinds. The next day I went through my uncle's things. I found a black binder buried beneath the basement stairs. Inside were pages of notes, hand-drawn maps of the house, old newspaper clippings and photos. All grainy, all black and white. Each one showed a mirror. Different shapes, different rooms, but always mirrors. In the oldest clipping, dated 1948, the house had belonged to a family of 5. The article was about a fire. Only the youngest daughter survived. The photo showed her clinging to a fireman, a long oval mirror behind her. I flipped to the next page. There was a sticky note attached. She only appears when you're alone. Another. The mirror moves itself. Do not remove it, she gets angry. Another. She likes to be seen. I thought about the list on the fridge. The rules. The routines. My uncle hadn't lost his mind. He just made peace with her. I couldn't. That night, I made the mistake of ignoring the blinds. I left one open. Just one. At 1:27 a.m., I woke to footsteps. Bare, slow, wet, coming down the stairs. I locked my door, covered the mirror with a sheet, and crouched in the closet. Something began to hum. Then I heard her whisper. Not outside the door. Inside the room. I'm already here. The closet door creaked open. I screamed, but there was nothing there. The next morning, I found the mirror shattered on the floor. But in the glass shards, my reflection was still whole. Like the mirror had broken, but I hadn't. I packed a bag and left. I stayed at a motel off Herndon for a week. Told the bank I'd reconsider the estate. On my final night before leaving Fresno for good, I drove by the house. All the blinds were drawn. Except one. And in that window I saw her watching. Not angry. Just waiting. Like she knew eventually I'd come back. Because houses like that, they don't stay empty. They wait. They remember. They sing. And when they do, you better not answer. In 2019, I moved into my aunt's old house on Maroa Avenue after she passed away. I was a retired schoolteacher, widowed, no children, and the house had always felt familiar to me. I remembered its creaky charm from childhood summers, lemon trees out back, yellow wallpaper in the kitchen, a long hallway that always seemed just a little darker than it should be. When I moved in full-time, I planned to modernize it slowly. New paint, fresh curtains. But one room I left exactly the way it was, the guest bedroom. It was the smallest room in the house, square, plain, with pale green walls and a narrow twin bed. My aunt had used it for storage in her later years. When she fell ill, she'd warned me never to use it. That room never wanted company, she said, almost joking. But her voice didn't carry the smile. I kept the door shut, locked it from the outside. Not because I believed her, just because it felt respectful. But about 3 weeks in, I noticed something strange. Every morning around 7 a.m., the door would be open. Not wide open, just ajar. A few inches. Enough that I could see the edge of the bed, the leg of the chair. Enough that it felt like an invitation. I was sure I had locked it. I started checking every night, double turning the key, pushing on the knob to test it. And still it would be open by morning. Then came the smell. Old dust. Damp cotton. The scent of something that had been locked away for too long. It didn't waft from the doorway like you'd expect. It slid. Like it was being pushed. I lit candles, placed lavender satchels, even called a handyman to check the door frame. He said it was fine. Houses shift, he told me. Doors open on their own. But I knew better. One night, I stayed up late watching television in the living room. The house was quiet, almost too quiet. At exactly 2:13 a.m., I heard it, a soft click. Then the unmistakable sound of a turning doorknob. I stood. My skin tightened. I moved toward the hallway and saw it with my own eyes. The guest room door turned slowly, click, and swung open. No breeze. No vibration. No explanation. Just the door, opening. I backed away. From that night on, it happened every night at the same time, 2:13 a.m. Sometimes the door creaked. Sometimes it simply slid open, as if someone inside had been waiting quietly for the right moment. Once I stepped close to the doorway. The room was colder than the rest of the house. Not ice cold. Still, breathless. Like it had been drained of something vital. I never entered. Then one morning I found something sitting on the floor inside the room. A book. An old children's storybook I hadn't seen in years. One I used to read aloud in my first grade classroom. It was open to the page about the little girl who gets lost in the woods. I picked it up with trembling hands and looked for a name. Inside the front cover, written in shaky pencil, were the words, "I don't want to be alone anymore." I put the book in the fireplace and burned it. That night, the door opened harder. It didn't creak, it slammed into the wall. A picture frame in the hallway fell and shattered. I didn't sleep. The smell was stronger now, wet, old cotton, like something forgotten in the attic. I decided to call a local priest. Not for a blessing exactly, I just wanted someone to stand with me. To hear it, to feel it. He came, stood at the doorway with his hand on the frame. Didn't step inside. "She's still here?" he said. I asked who. He didn't answer. But he handed me a small crucifix and told me to hang it just above the door. That night, the door didn't open. But I heard weeping from the other side. Not loud. Just a single voice. Tired. Childlike. "I don't want to be alone." Again and again until it faded just before dawn. The next day I finally stepped into the room. The air was thick, heavy with memory, and scratched into the wall behind the headboard were the words, "You locked me in. Now you can't leave either." I moved out 2 weeks later. I still own the house. Can't bring myself to sell it. But every night at exactly 2:13 a.m., the security camera sends me a motion alert. Always from the same place, the hallway, facing the guest room door. And every night, it opens. We moved into the house in the summer of 2020. A corner lot near Cedar and Shields, just far enough from traffic, close enough to family. My wife had just given birth to our first child, a girl named Mia, and we were still learning how to be tired all the time. The house was older, built in the 50s, but freshly renovated. New floors, painted walls, updated appliances. We didn't expect to find anything strange. We were just grateful to be out of our one-bedroom apartment. It started with the ceiling fan. One night, about 2 weeks after moving in, I woke up sweating. The fan above our bed had stopped. I reached for the switch. Nothing. I checked the breaker box. Everything normal. Then, from the baby monitor, we heard it. A tap. Then 2 more. Like knuckles on wood. Mia didn't cry, but the sound came again. Tap, tap, tap. We rushed to the nursery. Empty. Quiet. She was fast asleep, but the sound had moved. Now it came from above, in the attic. I didn't check it that night. The next morning, I went up with a flashlight. The attic was cramped, half-insulated, filled with nothing but dust. Except one thing. A door. Boarded up with weathered planks. Rough, splintered. Nailed deep into the frame. It was only 4 feet tall, wedged into the back corner like an afterthought. I hadn't noticed it during the walkthrough. I texted the contractor who'd flipped the house. He said there was no door in the attic when he worked on it, but it was there now. That night, Mia woke at 3:12 a.m. sharp. Not hungry, not wet, just screaming. The same thing happened the next night, and the one after, 3:12 a.m. Every time. I set up the baby monitor to record. Watched the footage the next day. At exactly 3:12, she bolted upright in her crib, not slowly, not groggily. Just sat up like someone had shouted her name. Then stared at the camera. Not crying, just staring. For 9 minutes. Then she laid back down. I checked the attic again. The door hadn't moved. Still boarded. Still wrong. I told my wife we needed to open it. She said, "Don't." I said, "I have to know." The next night I pulled the nails. All 8 of them. Behind the boards was a shallow space, maybe 3 feet deep, with a floor made of blackened wood. And in the middle of that space, a cradle. Small, rotting, and empty. No insulation. No wiring. Just that cradle. And carved into the wood above it, faint but still legible, were the words, "She wakes when I wake." I resealed the door. Screwed the boards back in. Covered it with boxes. But it didn't stop. Mia continued waking at 3:12 a.m. every single night. Even when we stayed with family across town. Same time. Same scream. Same stillness after. We started asking around. The neighbor across the street, an older man named Luis, said something strange. That house used to belong to the Cortinas. They lost a baby up there, I think. Long time ago. I asked, "They lost a baby?" He looked away. They never found her. I didn't ask more. But the next night we came home from dinner and something was waiting for us. On Mia's crib, a small carved wooden figure. A cradle. Identical to the one in the attic. Neither of us had made it. We moved out the next day. We live in Clovis now. No attic. No boarded doors. Mia sleeps through the night. But every year, on the anniversary of when we opened that door, she wakes at 3:12, sits up, stares at the baby monitor, and whispers something we can't understand. That I moved into a duplex on East Belmont in the fall of 2021. It was an older property that had been partially renovated, advertised as a private downstairs unit, with no upstairs tenant. The owner lived out of state, managed everything by phone, and offered a small discount if I paid the rent early. I liked the idea of quiet. No neighbors above. Just me and the sound of the old trees outside. But by the second week, I started hearing footsteps upstairs. At first, I thought I was mistaken. I even texted the landlord to ask if someone had moved into the upstairs unit. He replied quickly, "There's no unit above you. That level is sealed." I double-checked the listing. He was right. The staircase was closed off, drywalled and painted over. No access. No tenant. So I waited. That night at 11:47 p.m. I heard them again. Creak, creak, creak. Deliberate. Evenly spaced. The sound of someone walking slowly from one end of the room above me to the other. Then it would stop. Then start again. Sometimes back and forth. Sometimes in circles. Every single night. Always at the same time. I put a broomstick to the ceiling to test if it was just old wood settling. But when I pressed, the footsteps paused. Then resumed right above where I was standing. I bought a sound recorder. Left it running overnight. The next morning I played it back. The first half was normal. Cars outside, dogs barking in the distance. Then at 11:47 I heard the steps. 4 in a row. Then a pause. And then a whisper. Oh, garbled, but clear enough to make out. It said, "You're in my room." I moved my mattress into the living room, but the sounds followed. Now the footsteps started earlier. Now they moved faster. I heard dragging sounds, as if something heavy, something with limbs, was being pulled across the floor above. One night I heard 2 sets of footsteps, one heavier, one lighter, like a child chasing an adult. The next morning I found dust scattered across the floor beneath the sealed staircase, a perfect trail of footprints. There. I called the landlord again, asked if anyone had access to the attic or roof. He hesitated, then said, "You should move out. I'll cancel the lease." No argument, no excuses. I asked why. He only said, "That place should have stayed sealed." I didn't leave right away. That night I woke to the sound of knocking on the ceiling. Not random. 4 knocks. Pause. 4 knocks. A rhythm. Like a code. When I didn't respond, the hallway light turned on by itself, and the overhead fan began to spin, even though it wasn't connected to power. I finally grabbed a flashlight and pried open the drywall that covered the old staircase. It was hollow behind the wall, but warm. The air smelled like sweat and old carpet. I climbed up the first few steps. Each one groaned like it remembered being walked on. Halfway up I saw it. A handprint, pressed into the dust on the railing. Smaller than mine. Still fresh. I didn't go any further. I closed the wall and left the next day. I never got my deposit back. Didn't ask for it. But sometimes at night I dream I'm back there, and I hear something pacing above me. And this time the footsteps don't stay upstairs. They start down the stairs. Slow. Careful. Coming to finish what they never did the first time. In 2017, my parents moved into a small adobe-style home in Fresno's Tower District. They were both retired by then, Dad a postal worker, Mom a librarian. The house was quiet, a little run-down, but charming. It had a red tile roof, overgrown rose bushes, and a heavy front door with an old-fashioned brass mail slot sealed shut by a welded metal plate. The realtor said it had been closed in 1994, when the previous owner had trouble with neighborhood kids sliding junk mail and firecrackers through it. For the first 6 months, everything was normal. Then the letters started arriving. Not in the mailbox. Through the mail slot. The first one came on a Tuesday morning in February. A single white envelope resting on the entry rug, unmarked, hand-folded. Inside was a piece of ruled paper torn from a notebook. Written in my mother's handwriting were the words, "Do not let him in. He is not your son." She called me that afternoon crying. Thought maybe she had written it in her sleep. She showed me a photo, and it was her handwriting. Loopy, precise the way she always wrote grocery lists. But I hadn't been to the house that week. I lived 20 minutes away. My father was skeptical. Said it was a prank. But then came the second note. 3 days later. "He will come to the window first. Act like you don't see him." Again, same paper. Same pen. Same writing. That Friday night they heard knocking on the back window. Soft. Measured. When my father looked, there was no one there. But the blinds had been pulled up. From the outside. After that, they installed cameras. But the notes kept coming. Every few nights. Same slot. Same paper. No footage of anyone approaching. Only the final frame, the note falling to the floor. The mail slot had been sealed. They even removed the metal plate, checked for gaps. Nothing. One night they waited up. My mom sat in the living room with the lights off, watching the door. Around 2:30 a.m., the floor creaked behind her. She turned and saw a note already on the rug. She hadn't heard it arrive. She hadn't seen it drop. This one read, "He is inside now. Don't speak to him." They moved into my guest room after that. Told the realtor they wanted to sell. The next morning, a note was already on the welcome mat outside my apartment. No envelope. Just handwriting. "He follows." I told myself it had to be a joke. Until I started hearing my mother's voice inside my apartment. Not on the phone, not in the next room, but whispering behind closed doors when I was alone. She wasn't there. She was asleep on the couch. Then one night, I woke to find my front door open and a note placed gently on my pillow. This time it wasn't a warning. It was a message. "This is how it begins." We never sold the house. Instead, we had it blessed, sealed, everything short of an exorcism. The letters stopped for a while. But every year in February, another one arrives. Folded. No postage. No footprint on the doormat. And always written in handwriting no one remembers writing.